The house stood on the edge of the cliffs in Cornwall, a brooding structure of gray, stone and creeping ivy that the locals called Blackwood Manor. For generations, it had been the sanctuary of the Vance family, my family. My grandmother had hidden jewelry in the floorboards during the war. My mother had spent her final summer painting the sea view from the master bedroom. When cancer took her 3 years ago, Blackwood became mine. It was a heavy weight of a legacy, one I carried alone as an only child. Or at least, I thought I was alone until I married Marcus. Marcus was everything I wasn't. While I came from old money and dusty traditions, he was a survivor. He and his younger sister, Clara, had clawed their way out of a horrific foster care system in London. Their parents were addicts, in and out of prison, leaving the siblings to fend for themselves against a cruel world. Marcus had saved Clara, adopted her the moment he turned 18, and played the role of father, protector, and brother. Their bond was terrifyingly tight, forged in trauma. When I married Marcus, Clara looked at me not as a sister-in-law, but as an intruder. She was cold, dismissive, and territorial. It took 3 years for her to even call me by my name. Despite the rough start, I tried. God knows I tried. When Clara lamented that she had no heritage, no safe place, like Blackwood, my heart broke for her. She looked at my family's estate with a hunger that I mistook for admiration. So, against my better judgment, I gave her a key. I told her, "This is your home now, too. Just tell me when you're coming." She cried, hugged me, and for a moment, I thought I had finally bought her trust. The first crack in the facade appeared 3 months later. I received a motion alert on my phone from the silent alarm system I had installed, something Marcus didn't know about. I logged into the camera feed, expecting to see a delivery driver. Instead, I saw Clara. She wasn't alone. She was with a man I didn't recognize, tall, wiry, with a nervous energy. They weren't relaxing by the pool. They were in the library, pulling books off the shelves, tapping on the wood paneling. It looked less like a vacation and more like a search. I called her immediately. "Clara, are you at Blackwood?" There was a pause, a rustling sound, and then her voice, sickly sweet. "Oh well, I'm so sorry. I just needed to get away." It was a spur-of-the-moment thing. I forgot to call. "Who is with you?" I asked, watching the screen as the strange man pried at a skirting board with a screwdriver. "Just a date," she lied effortlessly. "We're just having some wine." I felt a cold shiver. She was lying to me in real time. I let it slide, but I archived the footage. That night, I asked Marcus about the man. He dismissed it, laughing. "Oh, she's had a rough month. Let her have her fun. She's never had luxury like this. Don't be a snob." His defense was too quick, too practiced. That was the moment the detective in me woke up. I didn't just have an ungrateful sister-in-law. I had a mystery on my hands. 2 weeks later, trusting my gut, I drove to Blackwood alone while Marcus was away on a business trip. The house felt violated. It wasn't just messy, though there were wine stains on the Persian. Rugs and mud tracked through. The hall, it was disturbed. The furniture had been shifted slightly, just an inch or two, as if someone had been looking behind it. In the study, I found the most damning evidence. Tucked behind a row of encyclopedias was a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a love note. It was a blueprint of Blackwood Manor. But it wasn't the original. It was a modern copy, with certain walls highlighted in red marker. My blood ran cold. The highlighted areas corresponded to the old rumors about the house, rumors of a hidden Prohibition-era vault my great-grandfather had supposedly built. They weren't partying. They were hunting for treasure. I realized then that the poor orphan's story might have been true, but it was being weaponized. Clara wasn't looking for a family. She was looking for a payday. I decided to set a trap. The annual memorial for my mother was approaching. It was a sacred weekend for me, my father, and my cousins. I told Marcus explicitly, "This weekend is for us. No Clara, no surprises." He agreed, kissing my forehead, telling me I was paranoid. But I saw the flicker in his eyes. He was texting someone immediately after. The day before the memorial, the silent alarm triggered again. I pulled up the feed. Clara was there, along with the wiry man and 2 others carrying heavy duffel bags and tools, crowbars, possibly drills. They weren't breaking in to sleep. They were breaking in to dismantle the house. I watched, heart pounding, as Clara pointed at the fireplace in the main hall, one of the red-marked spots on the blueprint. I didn't call her this time. I called the police. I told them there was an active burglary in progress at my remote property. Then, I got in my car and drove, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. When I arrived, the flashing blue lights painted the stone walls of the manor in a ghostly rhythm. Clara was in handcuffs, screaming on the lawn. The police had caught them drilling into the antique marble of the fireplace. But the real horror wasn't Clara's arrest. It was what happened when she saw me. She didn't look ashamed. She looked distinctive, venomous. "You selfish witch," she screamed, thrashing against the officer. "It's not your money. It's ours. Tell her, Marcus. Tell her." I froze. I turned around. Marcus's car had just pulled up the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be there until tomorrow. He jumped out, looking panicked. Not for me, but for her. He ran to the police, yelling that it was a misunderstanding, that they had permission. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, desperate. "Elena, tell them. Tell them you gave her a key." At that moment, the pieces clicked. The business trips, the constant defense of her behavior, the way he probed me about the house's history. Marcus wasn't just an enabler. He was the mastermind. He hadn't married me for love. He had married the girl with the mansion and the rumored hidden fortune. The man I loved was a con artist, and his sister was likely his partner in crime. I looked at the officer, then at my husband, and said the words that would end my marriage. "Officer, I have never seen those men before. And while she has a key, I revoked her permission weeks ago. I want to press charges. Against all of them." The police station was a blur of fluorescent lights and cold coffee. I sat on a hard plastic chair, watching through the one-way mirror as Marcus sat in the interrogation room, his head in his hands. He looked broken, a far cry from the confident man I had married. But my pity had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. I wasn't alone in the viewing room. Standing next to me was Julian Thorne. Julian was my father's attorney, but calling him a lawyer was an understatement. He was a fixer for the old aristocracy, a man who wore three-piece suits like armor and whose smile could cut glass. I hadn't called him. He had just shown up, claiming my father had a standing order to protect the estate. He was our new ally, the protagonist I didn't know I needed. "He's not who you think he is, Eleanor," Julian said, his voice a low baritone. He tossed a file onto the table between us. "His name isn't Marcus. It's Arthur Penhaligon. And Clara isn't his sister. She's his wife." The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. "Wife," I whispered, all rising in my throat. "They run long cons," Julian explained, tapping a photo in the file. It showed Marcus and Clara 5 years ago, celebrating a wedding in Las Vegas. They target vulnerable heirs, isolate them, and drain their assets. But this time, they weren't working alone. They have a handler. Someone paid for their fake identities, their clothes, even the ring he gave you. Julian turned me away from the glass. "You are in danger, Elle. These people don't just walk away when the plan fails. They owe money to someone very dangerous. And now that Marcus is in custody, that someone is going to come for you to collect the debt." I didn't have to wait long to meet this new threat. As I left the station, flanked by Julian, a black sedan was parked across the street. Leaning against it was a woman in a sharp red trench coat. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with silver hair cut in a severe bob and eyes that looked like flint. This was Vera. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like a CEO. But the way Julian stiffened beside me told me she was the apex predator here. Vera walked towards us, ignoring Julian completely. She stopped a few feet from me. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice smooth as velvet. "It seems my employees have made a mess of things. Disappointing. Arthur always did lack finesse." "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm the investor," Vera replied with a chilling smile. "I funded the operation to retrieve what is hidden in your manor. Arthur and his wife failed. Now, the debt falls to the owner of the property. That's you." Julian stepped in front of me. "She owes you nothing, Vera. Step away, or I'll have your accounts frozen by morning." Vera laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Julian, always the white knight. But you know the history of Blackwood better than anyone. That house was built on stolen gold. My grandfather's gold. I'm not leaving until I get it back. Eleanor, you have 24 hours to give me the key to the vault, or I release the evidence I have on your father. You think your family is innocent? Dig a little deeper." She got back in her car and drove off, leaving us standing in the rain. I looked at Julian, expecting reassurance. Instead, he looked pale. What did she mean about my father? I asked. Julian sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. There are ghosts in Blackwood, Eleanor, that even I tried to keep buried. But now, we have no choice. We have to find that vault before she does. Not for the gold, but for the documents inside. If Vera gets them, she destroys your family name forever. The game had changed. It wasn't just about a cheating husband anymore. It was a war between two bloodlines, and I was caught in the crossfire. The drive back to Blackwood was suffocating. Rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the coastline into a gray smudge. Julian drove with one hand, the other gripping his phone as he barked orders to his firm to secure the perimeter. I sat in the passenger seat. The image of Vera's cold smile burned into my retinas. "Tell me the truth, Julian," I said, breaking the silence. "Did my family steal it?" Julian didn't look at me. "During the war, your great-grandfather had a partner, a man named Istvan Kovac. They moved assets out of Europe to protect them from the Nazis. Gold, mostly. When the war ended, Istvan didn't come back. Your family claimed the fortune as their own to rebuild the estate. Vera is Istvan's granddaughter. She's not just a scorned investor, Eleanor. She believes she is reclaiming her birthright." I felt sick. My entire life, the privilege I lived in, was built on a foundation of betrayal. And the documents? "Proof," Julian said grimly. "A ledger. If she gets it, she won't just take the money. She'll use it to destroy everything your mother built. The charity foundations, the reputation. You'll be pariahs." We arrived at Blackwood. The house looked like a tomb against the stormy sky. We didn't go to the front door. Julian led me around the back, to the old servants' entrance near the cellar. Clara and Marcus were looking in the walls, Julian muttered, pulling a heavy flashlight from his coat. "Amateurs. Your great-grandfather was a bootlegger before he was a businessman. He didn't hide things in the house. He hid them under it." We descended into the wine cellar. The air was damp and smelled of cork and rot. Julian moved to a heavy oak rack filled with dusty vintages from the 1940s. He didn't pull a bottle. He pushed the entire rack. It groaned, the wood screaming against stone, revealing a narrow, dark passageway cut into the cliff rock. "Stay close," Julian warned. We walked into the darkness. The beam of the flashlight revealed moisture dripping from the ceiling. At the end of the tunnel stood a steel door, rusted but imposing. It had a combination lock, the kind used on bank vaults a century ago. "Do you know the code?" I asked, shivering. "No," Julian admitted. "But your mother did. She told me once, when she was delirious from the morphine near the end. She said, 'The day the world started again.' I thought she meant her birthday." "No," I realized, stepping forward. "May 8th, 1945. VE Day. The day the war ended in Europe." I turned the heavy dial. 0-5-0-8-4-5. The mechanism clicked, with a sound like a gunshot. Julian and I pulled the heavy handle, and the door swung open. The beam of light cut through the gloom. There, stacked on pallets, were rows of dull, yellow bars. Gold. Millions of dollars worth of it. But I didn't care about the gold. My eyes went to the small wooden desk in the corner. On it lay a black leather book. The ledger. I picked it up, my hands trembling. I opened it. It was all there. Dates, weights, and a signature that wasn't my great-grandfather's. It was a transfer order, forging Istvan Kovac's death certificate. "We have it," Julian said, his voice tight. "Now we destroy it." "No," I said, clutching the book. "If we destroy it, we're no better than them." Before Julian could argue, the lights in the tunnel flickered and died. We were plunged into absolute darkness. Then, from the top of the stairs, the way we had come, I heard the distinct sound of slow, rhythmic clapping. "Bravo, Mrs. Vance." Vera's voice echoed down the stone corridor, amplified by the acoustics. "You found it. I knew you would. Arthur was too stupid to figure out the code, but you have the blood of a thief in your veins. You think like one." "She's here," Julian hissed, pulling a small revolver from his jacket. I stared at him in shock. "Julian," I whispered, "what are you doing?" "Leveling the playing field," he replied. "Come up, Eleanor," Vera called out. "Bring the book, or I send my men down to bury you in that tomb with your family's sins. You have 3 minutes." We climbed the stone steps, the air growing heavier with every meter. When we emerged into the cellar, the scene was a tableau of violence waiting to happen. Vera stood by the wine racks, flanked by 2 men who looked like ex-military. They had their weapons drawn, trained on Julian. Julian didn't flinch. He kept his revolver aimed squarely at Vera's chest. "Drop it, Julian," Vera commanded, her voice like ice. "You're outnumbered." "I only need one bullet," Julian countered, his finger tightening on the trigger. "And I don't miss." I stood between them, clutching the black ledger against my chest. I realized then that I was the only thing stopping a massacre. Julian was willing to die to protect a lie. Vera was willing to kill to expose a truth. And I just wanted my life back. "Stop," I shouted, my voice echoing off the stone walls. I grabbed a heavy bottle of vintage brandy from the shelf and smashed it against the wall. The liquid soaked the floor. I pulled a lighter from my pocket, one I had confiscated from Marcus weeks ago, and flicked it open. I held the flame inches from the ledger. "Nobody shoots," I said, looking from Vera to Julian. "Or I drop this book into the fire. The paper is old, Vera. It will burn in seconds. And if it burns, your proof is gone. You get no vindication. You get nothing." Vera's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare? That book is your family's history. It's a confession," I corrected her. "And I don't care about it. I care about ending this." I took a step forward. "Here is the deal. Vera, take the gold. It was Istvan's share, and my family stole it. Load it up and leave. But the ledger stays with me. And you never speak of the Vance family again. If you do, I'll have Julian release files on your own illegal business dealings. Don't think we haven't done our homework." Julian looked at me, stunned. "Eleanor, you can't just give her the fortune." "It's not a fortune, Julian," I snapped. "It's blood money. It cursed my great-grandfather. It rotted this house. And it brought a con man into my bed. I don't want it." Vera stared at me for a long, tense moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile this time. It was one of respect. She signaled her men to lower their weapons. "Smart girl," she murmured. "Keep your secrets, Mrs. Vance. I prefer cash anyway." They spent the next hour moving the pallets. I watched them leave, the heavy trucks disappearing into the rain. When they were gone, I turned to Julian. He holstered his gun, looking older, defeated. "You gave away a legacy," he said quietly. "I bought my freedom," I replied. 6 months later, the renovations on Blackwood Manor are finally complete. I tore out the dark wood paneling and replaced it with light oak. I filled the house with new furniture, new art, and new memories. Marcus, or Arthur, as the court calls him, is serving 10 years for fraud and identity theft. Clara turned on him in exchange for a lighter sentence. She'll be out in 2, but she knows better than to come near me. Julian retired. I think the new world was too much for him. As for the ledger, I didn't keep it. The night Vera left, I sat by the fireplace in the great hall. I drank a glass of the wine my mother loved, and I fed the black book to the flames, page by page. I watched the names, the dates, and the crimes turn to ash and float up the chimney, disappearing into the night air. I am alone in Blackwood now, but I am not lonely. The ghosts are gone. The debts are paid. And for the first time in generations, the house is clean.